Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being, of course, the poetry discussion playlist, but number two being the ever-growing playlist of Emily Dickinson poetry discussions, poetry videos writ large. Don't forget to check out Emily Dickinson, The Darkest Poem. But what we have here, look, you know, if you've been here, Emily Dickinson, in my opinion, greatest poet of all time. In fact, I believe it was the last video we did on Emily Dickinson. I spent some time talking about how her brief poems, the shortest poems that she has, are often nearly incomparable in the English language. They are poems that are so precise that it's almost impossible to do a poetry discussion for them because everything that there was to be said about the idea was wrapped up so nicely. But what we can do is then spring off some other tidbit, perhaps, from the ideas at play in those shorter poems. And today, look, I love Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson, in my opinion, greatest poet of all time, may or may not have anything to do with the alleged relationship between the two of us. I cannot confirm nor deny these suspicions, but I disagree with Emily Dickinson here. Now, Emily Dickinson, one of the greatest minds of all the Western canon, and I'm a guy talking at my computer screen here in 2024. So take, what you will from this, but the poem in question today is known as To Fill a Gap, and it reads as such. And by the way, guys, if you hear those construction noises, I don't know what my neighbor was doing. He lived next to me for about 4 years, and after he moved out, it sounds like they're putting in an entirely new apartment over there. Possibly he got himself into some trouble with the ideas that I am going to talk about in this poetry discussion. But if you hear those noises, there's just nothing I can do about that. Whatever was going on in that apartment, they're putting in a whole new apartment to fill a gap. To fill a gap, insert the thing that caused it, block it up with other, and 'twill yawn the more. You cannot solder an abyss with air. This, in my opinion, from my observations, is an idea and a principle which gets a lot of people in a lot of trouble. So, how do I say that? Why do I say that? Why would I put this out there? I want you to think about that person that you know in your life who simply has to be in a relationship. Maybe it's you. If you don't know one, it's you. If you don't know one, everyone else in your life is learning from you. This idea, this principle, in the standpoint that we could be talking about a relationship, gets people into trouble all the time. To fill the void in your life caused by breaking up with your significant other, fill that void with another significant other. If you fill it up with anything else, your soul will not be able to get over it, because you cannot fill the void left by a lover with anything else. You cannot solder an abyss with air, right? Wow, wow, wooey. This is how people ruin their lives. Now, you don't have to take my advice, especially when it comes to dating. I am a miserable loner, growing lonerisher the longer I loner. But this idea, what it, I think it's a Cherry Poppin' Daddy's lyric. So be advised. The only way to get over somebody is to get under somebody else. Right? That principle ruins a lot of lives. In the absence of a relationship, one of my favorite sayings is when you do the math of all the relationships you've had that haven't worked, the common denominator is you. All the breakups you've been through, you were there. Maybe you're doing something wrong. So, in light of this idea, in contradiction to the idea presented in the poem, getting out of a relationship, maybe the best thing to do is not to get into another relationship. It's to work on the you. And I think that this principle actually holds true through many things in life. People leaving jobs oftentimes perform better, and this is from years of observation, often perform better when they do not have the pressure on them of having to have that job. So you get fired from your 9 to 5 and you don't have any reserves built up. The pressure and stress on you when you start that new job is miserable. But people who maybe they get fired, maybe they quit, they put in their 2-week notice and have nothing lined up, and they just coast for a month. Those are people going into their new job with a clear and level head. I think what the poem is getting at, I think what the poem is trying to say is to take into account the wholeness of the human experience and say that when you lose something, don't just shut off that portion of your life. It is important when you lose something. It is important when something is gone that an effort be made towards a type of normalcy. But as is often with the case, as is often the case with Emily Dickinson, are we talking about death here? If your father dies, does it do you much good to go find another daddy? I don't know. I think that's going to get you in a lot of trouble too. Where are the parameters here? What are we talking about with this poem? How far does this go? It would seem to me, that what Emily Dickinson is doing here is setting up, again, the holistic nature of the human experience. And perhaps you lose your father. You don't have to find a daddy, but to find a positive male role model. Your mother passes. You don't have to find a new mommy, but to find a woman in your life to care for and to care about you. This could be someone in the community. This could be all of a sudden your third cousin twice removed that you never really knew her name. Well, she's going through a hard time. You could be there for her. But then how do you ever grow? How does your world ever expand? This is an interesting poem to me because it is one of these small slivers of poetry that we get oftentimes from Emily Dickinson. These very little poems that are often so prophetic. But here, it feels almost, in the way that it is so loosey-goosey, in the way that it is perhaps misguided. I fear to say it. I cower at these words, at these instigations. But it feels almost there's a there's a contest every year for people trying to write the most Hemingway short story. This feels as if someone were trying to write the most Emily Dickinson poem, the most Emily Dickinson small poem, right? Anyway, that's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, there's poetry on the channel every Monday. Literature is all I talk about on this channel: poetry, short stories, novel read-alongs, those types of things. And as always, hit the subscribe button because I hope to have you back for the next one.